Hello. I want you to watch a video with me. This is from the Library of Congress, and it's about Yellowstone National Park, which I would love to visit. Let me know if you have. I would like to visit all the national parks. But this is when Yellowstone was first established in the 1800s. You know how suspicious the
In
1800s are.
1872, Congress passed legislation establishing Yellowstone as the first national park. This act protected 2.2 million acres of land and was the result of a collaboration between dozens of scientists and three artists: a painter, a photographer, and a printer. My name is Patrick Hastings. I work in the Rare Book and Special Collections Division at the Library of Congress, and I'm delighted to share a few books that celebrate the natural beauty of Yellowstone National Park. Dr. Ferdinand Vanderveer Hayden spent his career leading scientific expeditions into the American West. He collected fossils, studied flora and fauna, and documented the region's dynamic geological formations. In 1871, supported by $40,000 in congressional funds, Dr. Hayden assembled an expedition of 34 specialists, including geologists, topographers, biologists, and artists. The expedition spent 4 months exploring the territory around the Yellowstone River in present day Wyoming. Upon returning east, Dr. Hayden compiled a 500-page geological report and began advocating that Congress preserve Yellowstone as a national park. In Hayden's notes, he described the stunning landscape as having, quote, variegated colors, all intermixed and shading into each other with greater variety and more striking than ever adorned a work of human art. But that doesn't mean that Thomas Moran, the painter on Hayden's expedition, didn't try to capture these brilliant colors in his paintings. Moran's gorgeous landscapes were hung and admired in the halls of Congress, helping to convince lawmakers to establish Yellowstone as the first national park.
Okay. Now, in terms of lawmakers establishing Yellowstone as a national park and having these scientific expeditions, I just wanted to make note that I have noticed a similar pattern when I looked into the history of another national park, which is Cumberland National Park. There were stories of surveyors and another thing I'm noticing is a connection to the Civil War. A lot, but I'm getting ahead of this. We're going to finish this up, okay? But I just wanted to pinpoint that at this moment. But let's finish, okay?
While Moran's paintings captured the region's colors, the photography of William Henry Jackson, who was also on the expedition, provided visual evidence of Yellowstone's geological wonders for the wider public. For years, stories of geysers, hot springs, boiling mud pits, and dramatic mountainscapes were assumed to be the tall tales of eccentric trappers and prospectors. But as Jackson's photographs were reproduced, they provided proof of the region's incredible phenomena. Jackson transported 300 pounds of equipment across the region's rugged terrain to capture these influential images. Dr. Hayden included many of Jackson's photographs in his report, and the first director of the National Park Service commented that these photographs helped as much as anything to convince Congress that the Yellowstone region should be set aside as a national park. So Jackson's photographs brought Yellowstone to the public, but the images lacked color. Meanwhile, Thomas Moran's paintings had faithfully captured the incredible colors of the region, but only a select few people could see his watercolors hanging in the Capitol. Enter Louis Prang, an innovative printer who reproduced Moran's paintings in full color through a technique called chromolithography. This process involves using an oil-based crayon to draw an image directly onto a slab of limestone, then soaking the porous stone with water to saturate the blank spaces. When oil-based ink is rolled over the slab, the ink sticks to the grease of the crayon drawing, but not the wet areas, because oil and water repel each other. The ink sticking to the crayon-drawn image then transfers to the paper when it is pressed against the stone. Louis Prang's innovation was to use more than 30 stones, each with its own shade of color, to reproduce the tonal depth of Thomas Moran's original watercolors. To create one of these chromolithographs, it took Prang's workshop 3 months to prepare the pigments on the stones, plus another 5 months to print 1,000 copies. When the book was published in 1876, it was heralded as one of the most spectacular achievements in the history of printing. The Times of London claimed that no finer specimen of chromolithographic work had been produced anywhere. Thomas Moran himself was exuberant in his praise for the book's reproduction of his paintings, writing in a letter to Prang that the faithfulness with which you have reproduced my watercolors is beyond praise. I naturally feel proud that a work so difficult and extensive should have been produced in America. In this book, Louis Prang had produced a work of art worthy of national pride. Of course, there's a democratic impulse to this sort of mass-produced printing, a belief that fine art should be accessible and affordable to all classes of people. Prang's chromolithography allowed a painting worth $10,000 to be reproduced and sold to the wider public for less than $20. These prints shared the transcendent beauty of Yellowstone with everyday Americans, promoting the First National Park as a stunning example of our common ground.
Okay, so you can see that this was an influencer-driven project. And I want to point out that the gentleman, Hayden, he has an interesting background. Let me tell you more about it. Okay, his name being Hayden, the full name is Ferdinand Van de Veer Hayden, who died in Philadelphia, 1887. Just interesting footnote there. He was born, they say, in Massachusetts. But this is the interesting part about the Civil War. So 1861, the Civil War broke out. And this is according to the Smithsonian here. And it provoked Hayden to enlist in the Union Army, and he became a surgeon of volunteers. So he held a position in the Army until 1866. And he worked also with, I think, the Smithsonian, lots of interesting things, but the Geological Survey, and he did receive a medical degree, and he wrote several manuscripts. And they say he made Yellowstone known to the public. And yeah, so I want to show some pictures of him, because the pictures that the gentleman showed from the book, which wasn't it a really large book? So these rare books in the Library of Congress have a lot of pictures that they were, taking during these surveys. Again, I bring up Cumberland Island Seashore National Park as well, because there were several photographs taken again from the Army Corps of Engineers. They were doing surveys of the land, and I'm just seeing a few connections. But maybe we'll do a series on the national parks if you would like, and we may find a lot of connections, a lot of things that we can observe, right? Patterns, in other words. So I want to look at some pictures, and I want to get your input on them. Share your comments. I'd love to hear your comments. But when I look at hand positioning, and when I look at the amount of people on the expedition, it said it was 4 months, and they didn't find the Yellowstone National Park. This was not lost to someone, of course. The 1800s and all of the things that we've learned about the founding of architecture and the World's Fairs, and a lot of things that now bring about new questions as to who was here Who were the original people? Because there's no way all of this was just vast wasteland that nobody knew about. Okay, so let's look at these pictures. All right, let's look at this picture of Hayden, the head of this expedition. Again, we talked about his background being a surgeon in the Army during the Civil War, the Union Army. So I want to look at his hand position. All right. And I don't think I need to say much more. And let's also look at some more of these pics. Okay, let's look at this one. As you can see, it's a campsite. And we have seen pictures very similar to, I remember, I don't know, during Abraham Lincoln, during these type of war pictures. And I'm just saying, they look very similar. Some people say they look staged in many ways. A lot of these pictures, when you look at them, knowing what we've learned about a lot of these events, I find them very odd. Just the way people, it's something about the way that they seem. It's not natural or organic. The poses and a lot of the scenery, just it seems off. I can't explain it all, but you may know what I'm talking about here. But that's a campsite during this expedition. And let's see what else we have. Okay, we look at this picture, and a lot of this now, I see land grab type of things, and it just doesn't look good. I know what the narrative says, but I see land seizure under a different name. And here's another picture of the campsites. And yeah, something about it just doesn't seem organic. Let me know what you think. But I want to also talk about some of the unexplained mysteries that happen in Yellowstone Park. I don't know much about the television show Yellowstone, but maybe I might want to watch it. If you've caught any of the shows, let me know what you think. And I might be interested in checking it out now because I'm really interested in Yellowstone. Okay, let's talk about some of the unexplained and unreported phenomenon in Yellowstone. So this is from Yellowstone's page. And by the way, if you have checked out TikTok, a lot of the national parks, their TikTok accounts have been really weird, if you know what I'm talking about. They will show the park and all the natural beauty, but the soundtrack that they use for the uploads will be rap music, and like rap music that's really, what's the word, like really raunchy. Okay, raunchy stuff, talking about backing it up and twerking and it's just odd. And people, it's just been a thing on TikTok, if you know what I'm talking about. They've been wondering who is behind the page. And I don't know if I could show it, but trust me, if you go over there, or if you know anything about the talk of the national park pages. So let's see what is going on with the unexplained things here. So the of course people have questions. When will Old Faithful, that's the geyser, go off? And those are some of the questions. And reported sightings of Bigfoot. the elusive Bigfoot. So that's something. And they say a few correspondences in a sea of letters about plants and recreational activities spark some curiosity, not only about Bigfoot's reported presence here, but also about other phenomenon that may not have been reported. It was found that Yellowstone actually has a long history of strange occurrences, including reports of what has been dubbed lake music as early as the 1800s, 1880s. Lake music has been described as a buzzing sound that moves across Lake Yellowstone. Hiram Shittington, an early engineer in the park, refers to an overhead sound in his 1895 book, Yellowstone National Park. How creative, Mr. Hiram. And Shittington writes, a most singular and interesting acoustic phenomenon of this region, although rarely noticed by tourists, is the occurrence of strange and indefinable overhead sounds. They have long been noted by explorers, not only in the vicinity of Shoshone and Yellowstone lakes. Lake music continues to be heard by those who visit the park and camp in the lake area. The number of reports has led to scientific studies, yet no one has been able to conclude what causes the buzzing noise. 33 years, funny they would, okay, I'm going to stop. 33 years after the letters inquiring about Sasquatch sightings, the archives cannot claim to have official proof of Bigfoot sightings, nor does it hold documents that can explain the lake music. The Yellowstone Archives doesn't hold the letters to and replies from the chief rangers to curious people around the world with questions ranging from the mundane to the unusual, all waiting to be discovered. So, what do you think about that? Wow. So, Bigfoot, and I know a lot of disappearances happen around the park. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting things I bet are going on at Yellowstone Park. And I want to look at the natural beauty as well. Let's take a look at some of the natural beauty as well as the animals that you may see when you are visiting the park, okay?